And that's not something I would wish on any human being. But the fact of the matter is that for whatever the reasons are, everything is a soul compact. Every single event that occurs is a soul compact. And we, all of us, are living through the perfect geometry of the living moment, even if it's terrifying, even if it's horrifying.
Prove to me that you are alive.
Thank you for the kindness in the first instance, but I assuredly do speak out of the ego, but the trained ego. So the ego is a horse that you can ride, and it's a horse that you can jump on. If you're a skilled horseman, you will know how to make the ego as a utility, and it can be a useful one. But your point is taken, and it is true that I've long since departed being entrenched into the false light aspect of self. I don't need to position myself there, so I'm not there.
Hmm.
And I've not been there for decades, so I know myself well enough. So ego is not the thing that drives me, but I have a very, very identifiable persona. And I will fly into abject rages and wield what I call the sword of St. Michael at different times, and people experience that around me, and it's not a fun thing. But to answer your question, I've drank the cup of forgetfulness when I came into this world. I am somewhat tired of the subject because of who was one in a previous
The
lifetime. Well,
comparison, basically, right?
I've been told by high priests and by high lamas that I was a king of kings,
Hmm.
that I was a supreme king of kings, and this has been told not just by one or two, but by many, many viziers and so-called oracles and what have you, who have variously engaged with me. And even here, I've had scores of them come over the years, sometimes in delegations of 20 at a time. The biggest delegation I had was about 36 or 37 of high priests and high priests came and asked me to address them because they had an idea of some provenance of my soul that I have no recollection of. And I've said this multiple times. I don't know. I don't have a recollection, and I couldn't care less anyway. So they've asked if I would accept certain divinations and allow the trance priests to go into trance and do their divinations. And I've allowed that, and they've then given their prognosis, and they've said, well, this is what we believe you to be X, Y, and Z of the ancient Mahabharata, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
Whatever. I've got to tell you straight up, I don't care. I couldn't care less. And the last fucking thing I want to do is try and build on the possibility of a previous incarnation, which may or may not be some majestic incarnation. It's of no consequence to me. And I'll tell you why. Because I recognize that every single one of us is and has been the archetype of Alexander the Great, of Cleopatra, of fucking King Solomon, of Moses. All of those historical and archaeo-historical archetypal creatures, some mythic and some historical, are embedded in each one of us at the fractal level. And that's the point. That is the point. Why do you think you've got, at any given time, 12,000 stupid women running around wafting incense and waving eagle's feathers in sacred ceremonies, telling the world that they are the re-embodiment, or the reenactment, or the rebirth of Cleopatra?
Hmm.
Why do you think? Because they, in that sense, are.
Hmm.
And they're simply picking up in the zeitgeist that aspect of the archetype Cleopatra that we all inhabit. So I think we have to disidentify from this notion that I am a reincarnation of King Solomon, or I am a reincarnation of the ancient Mahabharata High King. It's nonsense. Yes, I may well have been, but so what? So what? It's my contention that every single human being, in order to, I think maybe we mentioned this the other day, I can't remember, but every single human being, in order to qualify as a human being, has to have experienced as the soul stream of every other sentient genus on Earth. So you had to have been a butterfly. You have to have been a bumblebee. You have to have been a giraffe. You have to have been, a stalagmite. You have to have been a goldfish and a shark and a, octopus. You have to have been an oyster. You have to have been there's 100 million different genus that we each would have slipped into the stream of consciousness of in order to ultimately synthesize and qualify as a human being to be born to a human body. So I know that that's true, incidentally, that each one of us have had to move through all the strata and substrata of sentient life and organic life in order to achieve
Absolutely.
this status. So therefore, what are we saying? I am every man.
Mm,
Every man is me. And this idea that we identify with being a discrete, not discrete as in confidential, but discrete as in a single package of
mhm,
something. The idea that I am an identifiable creature is a nonsense. I'm a quantum creature. And I think that that's what this great change, this great shift of ages is about to educate us all to.
yeah, I was really like leading to, you know, because I'm getting a sense that in this reincarnation you are the bodhisattva, and I was just kind of wondering if you ever thought about, is this your last reincarnation in the human form? Like that's where I was kind of leading to,
Right.
have you pondered that? Have you meditated on that?
I have to some extent. I mean, I don't ponder on these questions. I don't ever make the time to think about these kinds of questions. As I said, I've never prayed in my life. I've never meditated for 3 seconds in my life. I
Mhm,
just don't. I never have done, and I don't have, in that sense, any sense of. There's no discipline
mhm,
to me. I don't have a practice or discipline. Never did. Um, but I have momentarily considered these things. I just don't know that they're terribly important.
mhm,
My sense of being is to be full tilt in the now. My sense of being alive is to simply bring to the living moment every quanta of life force that I have, mind, body, and soul, and to be as present and consistent in the state of witness. In the first instance, I'll say this: being in the state of witness is the only way that I can personally not be in a state of unbearable pain.
mhm,
So I don't dwell, I don't look over my shoulder. I've been through very deeply sad and even tragic circumstances very recently in life. This last year of 2024 was without a doubt for me an apocalypse. And and I know that being fully present in those moments that I had to navigate in the last year, especially with the death of a beloved, was, we touched on this briefly, being fully present and immersed in the experience at the time was sufficient for me to, and not blinking, was sufficient for me to be able to transition from that traumatic experience and not carry residue. So I'm not carrying residual pain,
mhm,
and I don't want to, and I can't shed tears, and I haven't shed a single tear
mhm,
to speak of since that event happened. Was 1st of October last year, and and here I am 3 months later, or thereabouts, 3 or 4 months later, and I've not shed a single tear, and and that's because I don't permit myself the indulgence of going back and circling around a deeply, deeply traumatic and desperately sad experience, because I lived through that experience to the full.
yeah,
So I was so deeply filled with the travesty and the sadness at the time that I drank of that
mhm,
fully. I became intoxicated fully in that. What else is there to do? No part of it was beautiful in that sense. It was so ugly and so terrifying and so painful. But I lived that experience and moved on. And I don't wish to move back into experiences again. I want to be fully immersed in it, understand. So, this is what it is to look into the eyes of a beloved as they're leaving this world in agony,
yeah,
not in pain, not in a sweet, loving, embrace of the angelics. Actually, the angelics were very much involved, but it was horrendous. And that's not something I would wish on any human being. But the fact of the matter is that for whatever the reasons are, everything is a soul compact. Every single event that occurs is a soul compact. And we, all of us, are living through the perfect geometry of the living moment, even if it's terrifying, even if it's horrifying. And it's if we can position ourselves in that abject state of witness and non-identification, then you know that to be true. And that's the only way any sage, I believe, can ultimately get through life to full benefit of self and of others, is if we sail through everything in a state of grace. God knows right now, millions of people are dying somewhere in the world, are dying lonely, racked in pain, and in a state of grace. Many of them are going through that pain and are alchemizing that death, that sickness, with grace. God loved them, every single one of them. And every one of them that is doing that, going through their own process of the trial of separation or sorrow or grief or pain, physical pain or mental pain, they are feeding into the greater field of consciousness, that element of grace. They're gifting their grace to the greater field of consciousness, which makes it that much easier for others, who find themselves in a similar quanta, a similar crossroad. We can pick up through the ethers, the strength that others leave behind almost as a residue in the field. That's true. And that's why every life well lived really helps in the process of evolution of all beings. I'll leave it at that.
You know, for many years,
Sorry, I didn't answer the question about the bodhisattva
yeah.
piece. So let me quickly touch on that, because you very graciously were patient with me. 3 times you asked the same question, and 3 times I tried to shirk it. So let me try and answer it. The bodhisattva thing, in the first instance, I am not, in my own estimation, a fully qualified soul. So I do not regard myself as being enlightened. I know that I have entered into enlightenment, and I know that once you have entered into enlightenment, in a sense, it never leaves you. That is absolutely true, because it embeds or imprints you in such a way that you are now. It's why I'm unscripted in life. It's why
Mhm.
I can literally walk out of this room onto a stage. There could be 10,000
Yeah.
people there, and I can riff for 3 hours on pretty much any subject. And there's no part of me that goes into trauma or fear, because I'm not looking at myself. I'm
Mm.
not afraid of what if. And I've learned the power and the majesty of being in the now. But having said that, I see myself as being profoundly sullied in many, many different ways. But that doesn't offend me. It doesn't offend me to be a human being, and at the same time to be somebody holding on to the immanent flame of pure truth, you know, uh, as if my life depended on it. Well, that's because my life does depend on it. It's all good. The bodhisattva piece is really connected to the souls that leave this world, and have capacity to move straight into the supradimensional realms, and escaping, in that sense, again, the wheel of samsara. But they can also choose to come back into this realm and to be of service. To that extent, I may well have accomplished and achieved state of bodhisattva. It may well be my signature, but I don't know and I don't care, because I
Mm.
don't consider these things. I'm too busy being intoxicated in the living moment, in that sense. And I think we have to, all of us, be very, very cautious that we don't allow a spiritualized ego to take over false light ego, because in a sense the spiritualized ego could become the very worst.
Much more tricky. Much more tricky.
The reason why I drop f bombs and I use foul language, not all the time, but fairly frequently, is again just to keep grounded and to keep it real. And because the very last thing I want to do is to have a cult following. I know and I do to some extent. There's a bit of that goes on in my own networks, but I don't think it's a strong demographic. I think in the main, 98% of the people connected to the New Earth idiom, the thing that I've been championing, are doing it for the right reasons. There is no part of it that is cult of personality,
Yeah.
of me. I think that people get that I'm, barefoot in the mud, and that we don't go into those stupid spaces. We just don't fucking do it. I
Mm.
mean, if I chose to, do you know how many years it took before I would agree to even have a website, sachastone.com?
Mm.
I only had that 2 years ago. I refused for over a decade, 15 years, 20 years. I refused to have a Sacha Stone anything. And I've refused to write books. I've refused to have certain films,
Mm.
made on my life. Who gives a fuck? So I don't want to go into that space because I'm terrified of the implications or the ramifications of going into cult of personality. I think it's truly ugly. And I'm not saying that in false modesty. I think it's truly, truly ugly. I look at Michael Jackson as an icon. I'm not suggesting I'm anywhere near as talented as a Michael Jackson, but I am saying it's a classic example to take of somebody who is built up as an icon because of the false light attention of billions of people who are
Mm.
embedding that
Mm.
icon. And he becomes a monstrous individual, beautiful soul, without
Yeah.
any question, a beautiful being, but a monstrous construct who ends up being destroyed and obliterated precisely because of that overkill. If he'd just been a brilliant songwriter, performer, what have you, and been grounded, he wouldn't have been such a target to the Sabbatean invisible masters, whereupon they were forced to murder him in a sacrificial rite. But the same can be said of many
Yeah.
of these icons or celebrities who allowed themselves to be swept up into that false light matrix and become embedded with all of that false light value. That is deeply, very, very dangerous ultimately. And cult of personality is something which I think the whole world has moved on from. Well, he says that, but then we look at Donald Trump, who I'm quite fond of.
Mm.
But the Trump phenomena is in danger of becoming that. Elon Musk, the Iron Man, is in danger
Mhm.
of becoming that. Let's see where it plays forward. But I rather suspect that humanity as a whole are definitely now growing up beyond cult and cult of personality. Please go
Yeah,
on.
see, the difference with you is that we feel you on an intuitive level, and you just cracked two very, fundamental codes. One, when you said, and I talked about it today in the video. It's very weird that you bring this up. I say that instead of putting time aside to get into a meditative state, you become the meditation, meaning you're not separate from that meditative state at all times. Listen, I know that you have a lot going on, and I cannot thank you enough for your kindness. I cannot thank you enough for your light. I know you have a lot of things to do today. If you could take us out of here, what I wanted to ask is kind of come back down to earth. What do you got going on right now in Indonesia? What's going on, and what are your next steps? What should we expect from Sacha Stone?
Well, I'm not sure what you can expect from me, but I'm certainly the New Earth project is my life's work and my great passion, and connected to that are various satellites. One of which is the International Tribunal for Natural Justice, which I founded in 2015, and which has conducted multiple groundbreaking judicial commissions of inquiry. The first main one in 2018 was into human trafficking and child sex abuse.
Mhm.
So that was what was that, 7 years ago.
Prove to me that you are alive.
Really, that was what tore the lid off the whole ritual satanic
Mm.
abuse and pedophilia thing at a big level, and deeply proud of the work that we pioneered in 2018. In 2019, I launched the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into weaponization of the biosphere
Mm.
here in Bali with many of the great and good leading figures in the world in geoengineering and vaccines in health sovereignty, and that was 6 months before COVID, and we were warning the world of what was coming down the pike, which of course it then did.
Mhm.
And then we did the judicial inquiry into Corona itself, COVID, during the course of lockdown in 2020, where we had scores of the world's leading scientists and doctors. I worked with Robert Kennedy Jr. On the mock trial of Anthony Fauci, which was called Focus on Fauci. I did that. I produced that in 2022. I'm so sorry,
Wow.
2021, January of 2021, with Bobby Kennedy, Dr. David Martin, Judy Mikovits, and Rocco Galati. Very, very happy that we did that. Again, ahead of the curve, way ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
4 years ago, holding Fauci on trial. Everything we did then, January of 21, is now January of 25, about to hit
That's
the real
crazy.
target,
That's
because
crazy.
Kennedy's now in control of that in Washington and will take down Fauci and Gates. But 4 years ago, I was so desperately imbued with the spirit of that remedy that I reached out to him and said, "Can we put Fauci on trial?"
Wow.
And a 3-hour special broadcast. I did the Line in the Sand initiative, the Reclaim Your Lives initiative, galvanizing hundreds of the world's leading scientists and microbiologists and forensic experts and analysts and what have you, again, to drum up this noise around humanity being vaccinated into oblivion. And that was my unrelenting work throughout end of 2019, throughout 2020, into 2021, where we did the Arise Resurrection tour across the US, which cost the lives of 6 of my friends and compadres on that tour. But we did it. Scott McKay, the Patriot Street Fighters, a bunch of Navy SEALs, myself, and Lee Dundas, the prosecuting attorney activist. We pulled it off. I was the last man standing, essentially, with Lee Dundas at the end. Everyone else had become mortally ill through EMF pulse weapons, which we knew were being deployed on that tour. But the second from last gig that we did at a huge church in, I think it was Pittsburgh, we got nailed. 2 people in the audience died, and Scott McKay, 2 of my crew, a couple of Navy SEALs who were on stage, got hit so hard they never recovered, and that tour all but canceled. I carried on. And I was inured. I now know why I was inured to the whatever that EMF
Mm-hmm.
was. This will all come out, incidentally,
Mm-hmm.
now that the light will be cast onto the deep state, into Washington. The records are all contained. This stuff will forensically all be surfacing, incidentally, in the course of the next few years. I'm very excited about this. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, that was the Arise Resurrection tour. Robert David Steele, of course, died at the end of that. Excuse me. And then I went on to Mexico to decompress from that. And in Mexico, I stumbled into the Bacala Laguna there, discovered a hyperdimensional water molecule in the Bacala Laguna on the Mayan Riviera, which getting in and out of that changed my life. And I'd been so attuned to water all my life, and especially since I launched the New Earth Project in 2000 and
12, I think, right?
yeah, 2013. Technically, we officially launched it. That was 12 years ago, and that was predicated on water and the understanding that water was going to become the quanta, that water is the carrier of quantum consciousness.
Mm.
Waters in the human cells, the primary waters of the world, are going to merge, and that's going to become the kind of morphogenetic upshift. But it's going to be connected to how human consciousness and water itself reconvene, primary relationship. So, getting into the Lake Bacala Laguna in Mexico in 2021, at the end of that tour, resurrection tour, into 2022, pretty much changed my life. And I decided that's it. This is where we build the New Earth Sanctuary, the first big residential
Mhm.
place. And here we are, 2.5 years later. We own the land there now. We've got our micro investors, our early pioneers, and we're starting the build out of that. It's taken, I've got to tell you, 2 years to get through the compliances, to get the zoning and the permissions and permits to be able to build on the banks of this exquisite laguna. But that'll now manifest in very quickly. So that's underway. And then Tennessee, I began this last year in 2024, identifying also a piece of land in the Middle America that we would also twin with the project in Mexico, so that we could also not bail on our American fellows as
Mhm.
attempting to demonize America and flee America and implode the US dollar and demonize America. I thought, no, we've got to plant the new earth seed in the heart of middle America as well, which is why we zeroed in on Tennessee. So we're
Wow.
acquiring land there right now and should be making formal pronouncements about that when I'm on stage at the Conscious Life Expo in a couple of weeks' time in LA. All things being equal, we don't know what's happening in the US.
Mm.
To finally answer the question to you, what am I doing right now? I'm here in Bali at my home, but it's also the where the New Earth Haven is, and we have the hereditary leader, Chief Phil Lane Jr., who just arrived last night, late last night. He arrived. He's downstairs somewhere getting a Balinese massage, bless his heart. And he is here in preparedness of officiating at a major ceremonial event on Monday where all the high priests are turning up. I think we've got 10 of them, and some royalty are turning up. Steven Seagal, who is a ninth Dan karate master, seventh Dan Aikido master, part Mohawk, and a ceremonialist, and he's a diplomat, a special envoy of Vladimir Putin's,
Yeah.
and he's a beloved friend of mine and a man who was much maligned, much misunderstood because
Yeah.
he declared war, in a sense, against the woke liberal intellectual turds in
Yes, sir.
Hollywood decades ago. So he's been subjected to their evils and their mainstream media campaigns, trying to turn him into what he's not. But he's a powerful and a beautiful ceremonialist, and he's just arrived today, just messaged me about half an hour ago. So he's coming and will also be participating. And it's a big ceremonial event on Monday, which is bridging the East and the West and the North and the South in that sense. The prayer of all directions coming in to help catalyze unity consciousness here in Southeast Asia, bringing the eagle and the condor and the hummingbird, the quetzal, the hopi, and biblical prophecies all to roost. This is the regenesis point this year of the resurrection of the rainbow warrior tribe, which is the true human, the
Wow.
human that is now moving beyond religious persuasion or economics bracket or sectarianism of any order of magnitude, just the human that is moving beyond being a black skin, brown skin, red skin, yellow skin, white skin. The true human
Hmm.
is now emerging, the superluminal angelic human. And ceremonial events like this are where I bring together and host um, leading spiritual, religious, cultural, and hereditary leaders in order to help to convene that spirit. So we'll be filming it. There's a film crew coming in, and we will release that probably. Then I'll be doing a Q&A session in the evening. I mean, the actual ceremony lasts from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. is a 3-hour ceremonial event, and it'll be very, very intense. There'll be
Wow.
a very big audience here who will be participating in the ceremony. And then at 6 p.m., we'll leave my villa, which is where the big ceremonial event will be crowded in there. We'll fit 175 probably plus people in there just for the ceremonial piece. And then it'll move over to the New Earth Haven, where there'll be a big kind of sunset buffet and relaxation. And then later in the evening, Steven Seagal, myself, and Chief Phil Lane Jr. will set up back here in the villa with another 150 or 200 people thereabouts, I imagine, maybe more, and do a Q&A, just a private audience with going into these questions of hereditary redemption,
Hmm.
resurrection of the ancestral blood song, apocalypse, Hollywood, what's happening. It's going to be very interesting to hear what Steven says about Hollywood. Here's a
Yeah.
guy who's made 50 blockbuster films
Yeah.
and has been completely blackballed by Hollywood
Yeah.
for the last 25 years. It's going to be very interesting to hear his take on Hollywood and the apocalypse. But these are the subjects that we'll be kind of Q&Aing with the live audience, and we'll film all of that as well. So that's the work I'm doing right now. Then in a couple of days' time, I'll be heading back to Bacalar in Mexico, pick up there for a week or so with the project there, check on things, and then I'm heading to the US, to Malibu, to Hollywood, and I'm looking forward to witnessing what I witnessed there. Of course, I
Hmm.
half know what to expect. And then I'll be doing the Conscious Life Expo there in Los Angeles for 3 days. I'll be presenting, doing my own keynote, and then I'll be chairing 2 panels there on the New Earth, the whole New Earth vision thing. And then I'm heading off on tour a steady tour across the US, which will actually take up until Midsummer's Day. It'll take me all the way to late June. I'm doing a social tour.
Wow.
So I meet with thousands and thousands of people, which I'm really looking forward to because that's the piece that I enjoy the most.
Hmm.
And marching on toward Tennessee, where we will be planting the flag Midsummer's Day, proclaiming the soil consecrated fully. We will, by that time, have. We were going to do it in Equinox in March
Mhm.
21st, but because of what's happened recently and what's in LA, we're
Yeah.
moving everything back until Midsummer's Day. It makes a lot more sense to do that, but it's essentially piercing the corporate veil of the war powers with the soil in Tennessee, and then handing that soil back to the Cherokee Nation
Wow.
and the other hereditary elders who will be gathered there that day, and they will then hand the land back to us, the New Earthers, as the Rainbow Warrior tribe. So it'll be a very symbolic event for the whole world that many African and Southeast Asian hereditary leaders and kingships are looking to that event in Tennessee, Midsummer's Day, as being the starting gun, essentially, that begins the process of hereditary redemption. Because we
Wow.
have to pierce the corporate veil. By that, what I mean, and it's important that the audience and you understand this, by piercing the corporate veil, what I mean is this, and hear me because this is powerful stuff. Your home is not your home. Your farm is not your farm. Your country is not your country. It's owned by the King of England and by the Black Pope. So and the Black nobility in Switzerland. They own the registrations, the certifications, the deeds, the trusts, and the bonds of every single square inch of land on the surface of the earth. They own you, your soul, and the souls of your children, your grandchildren. Anything that has been registered at birth or registered at death, any tractor or bicycle or farm or business that has been registered is owned by the king, the crown of England, and the black nobility and the black papacy and the Vatican. So we are held as collateral, as chattel. There is a huge black magic dream spell which has been cast over humanity for the last half a millennium. We need to break that now. We need to bleach the soil of all of those ancient treaties and compacts and registration marks and so on, because they are spells, and we have to free them up consciously, ceremonially, with hereditary leaders and shaman and cleansing of the soil, but also through the actual legal processes and lawful processes. So that's what our law commission is doing. The land in Tennessee, we're cleansing it, purging it of all the ancient treaties, covenants, and compacts and bonds that go back hundreds and hundreds of years. In fact, they go back to 451 AD, 1,500 years. Once we've done that and put the war powers on notice formally in the appropriate way, the Pentagon, the United Nations, the Crown of England, the Vatican, the US Treasury, so on, once we put them all on notice as appropriate, they will not have been able to rebut the charges, so to speak, or the claims. And once we give them second notice and they have failed to rebut those claims, we will move into true form, and we will take containment of that sacred soil. It will have been cleansed. It'll be handed back to the Cherokee in this case, because they are the First Nations of Tennessee.
Mhm.
Tennessee is what they called themselves centuries ago. And that's why we're doing this enactment ceremonial event in Midsummer's Day in Tennessee. So my tour, called I Am the Golden Ticket, is the I Am, speaking about the I Am, speaking about I am the Jacob's Ladder, I am the Rubicon, I am the cauldron of creation, I am creator, I am the I am. This is not the same thing as false light or ego or Lucifer or what
Yeah.
Adam Crowley and Madame Blavatsky were. There's nothing to do with that for all you crypto Christians out there who like to think that anyone who says the I am is a Satanist. Go fuck yourself. You just
Yeah.
don't know about anything. The fact of the matter is that the I am is how we unlock our Christed mantle and get into convention with the Master Jesus, the Living Testament, or the Master Buddha, or whatever our persuasion is. So that's what this tour is about. It's about tethering the I am and the actualization of self into true form, with how we then move into this world, embody, enact, and manifest anchor patterns of perfection, and dynamically participate in the kingdom of heaven on earth, and how we reclaim the soil, and how we're doing it in Tennessee and elsewhere in the world. I'm showing that to people on this tour. So it's intense. My presentation and talk is probably about 3 hours long, but I'm always there for hours and talking and engaging and happy to do so. So thank you for asking the question. What am I doing right now? It's essentially getting ready for this elongated tour through the United States, albeit I'll be breaking it up and going to Africa to continue in April. The whole of April, I should be back in Africa. But essentially, the US tour is going to take about 6 months to completion.
I am first of all so happy to hear that you will be in the States. A lot of people asked me, is Sasha coming back to the States? And I think that we have been kind of yearning for your presence to be here. So first of all, I'm very happy that is happening. I pray that we can link up while you're here, in physical form. Second, please tell Steven Seagal that for a post-Soviet Union kid like me, he was a superhero and he still is a superhero, man. Instead of Iron Man and Superman, we used to hang up Steven Seagal on the wall. So just relate to him, how important he was to my childhood. I feel so blessed, man, receiving all of this. The fact that you opened up your heart, that you chose to share this moment with me, I thank God. When I wake up, I'm so thankful. um I continue to say that you are a blessing to all of us, and that's how you are different from everyone else that creates movements and everything like that, because you truly give us wings. And this is not just a movement, this is us, waking up our genetic memory, so to speak, becoming back, who we truly are. And we love you for that. You're always amazing, you're always as handsome as ever in your physical form. And please come back whenever you have time. I know you're going to be busy, but this is amazing. I have a billion and more questions, man, to ask you, so please come back. Thank you so
That's fine,
much.
brother. Set it up with Antonio and look forward to the next time.
I
Thank you.
will. Thank you so much, and take us out of here, man.
Well, there's not much I can add. I've been doing a lot of wheezing. I've broken out into a sweat. It's very hot in here, and I can see the chief downstairs seated at the barley having his breakfast. So I'm going to run down and
Cool.
join him. But just to say, um, check out what's happening on Monday, Naz. Maybe stay in touch with Antonio and ask him to get you the link to the film once we
Definitely.
release it, and then put that out to your audience. I think they would very much enjoy this piece that we're kicking off on Monday.
Definitely. Thank you so much, brother, man. You're the greatest, man. Thank you.
Prove to me that you are alive.